Elizabeth.
Hello, how's it going?
It is going awesome. So as you know, I'm Dana. I am the founder of Free Living Co. And Elizabeth is one of my amazing expert contributors. Do you want to just introduce yourself and talk about what you do?
Yes, of course. So I'm Elizabeth, and I'm a functional dietitian specializing in gut health. But my biggest thing is helping everyone understand how food can really become their own medicine and ways they can support their own body through food. And I've loved getting to work alongside with Free Living Co. because they're huge on the quality of what we're putting on our body, in our body, and then even what we're using at home too. So it's aligned really well.
Yes, yeah. No, we love your content. It's been so awesome to have you contributing. And the reason we're here today is I am going on a body composition overhaul. I don't know, I need to think of a kitschier marketing way to phrase this, but basically I am trying to really focus on reducing my body fat, and I'm trying to take a holistic wellness approach to doing this, and because I want obviously want to do it in a healthy way and a sustainable way that I can continue, all these habits down the road. And so nutrition, I think, is one of the biggest things. And I'm gonna put myself out there, Elizabeth, and give you all of my dirty secrets. I think my biggest, I recently posted an article and I did a big alcohol detox. And honestly, like that wasn't that hard. And I'm a very social person and I like to, drink my wine and all that, but it really wasn't that hard to quit alcohol. But what it really highlighted was the fact that I have a really bad sugar addiction. And it's kind of like a sneaky addiction. And then I just started to notice I would like, grab like a handful of trail mix, but make sure that I had like extra sweets in there. And, it's like kind of sneaky. But then when I really started to think about it and really look at my day to day, I feel like I'm like one of the average Americans consuming way too much sugar. And so I was hoping you can help me with that and help the audience because hopefully there's other people out there, or not hopefully, but I'm sure there are other people out there that have same issue. And so hopefully we can tackle this together.
Yes, yeah, you're definitely not alone. I'd say most people I work with, I talk to, sugar is kind of that one craving that we tend to not be able to kick as easily, especially when you don't understand kind of what your body needs, how to balance out your plates, your snacks, and all that to reduce those cravings. And it's so interesting, like you mentioned, like you noticed you had a really successful wean off of the alcohol when you removed it from your intake, but found that sugar is just kind of that consistent one triggering you. And again, I think sugar is very similar where it's just that dopamine effect, right, on our brain, where it's just always giving you that dopamine factor, making you feel good. And of course, when we're craving it, it's really hard not to reach for. And you're definitely not alone. I would say most people are about like 2 to 3 times over their sugar consumption daily too.
Yeah. Well, so tell me, why is that? I mean, why, first of all, why is sugar so bad? And why is it so hard I mean, like, I feel like I'm a pretty strong person and like I can kind of, cold turkey, like stop myself. But this one's like been really tough.
Yeah. So with sugar, again, it does have that dopamine reaction, right? Anything that feels good, your body does remember and it wants to reach for that again. And then with sugar in general, the problem I typically see is that sugar now is hidden in so many food products that we're continuously exposed to. So even like the foods that are like health foods, that we reach for, they tend to have hidden sugar in it that then is just getting your body addicted to it, which makes it so much harder to avoid it or to reduce it. And then whenever I think of sugar in general, I always think of, what is the big impact it's actually having on the body? And it can affect so many things. It's going to impact your blood sugar, which long term can lead to diabetes. It also can impact inflammation. And we know chronic inflammation is one of the big drivers of autoimmune conditions and other diseases. And then it also can drive metabolic syndrome, which again, that's more relative to diabetes, obesity, and it can in fact impact your liver as well. So it's actually linked to non-alcohol fatty liver disease. So it's like a sugar liver essentially. So your liver gets bogged down from all that sugar, is no longer able to detox it. And then of course it can impact your gut health too. So sugar, really, as good as it tastes, long term it can really have a negative impact on our overall health.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I think I heard that it is more addictive than cocaine. Did you hear
Yeah,
that?
I
Yeah.
have heard that. Yeah. which is wild to
I've
think.
never tried the former, but and let me just say that I'm not going to because it's like, yeah, it seems to be very addictive.
Mhm.
So tell me about, so here I am, I'm like the clean lady, right? And it's funny, one of my friends, she's like, Free Living Dana, does Free Living Dana, like, is she okay with if I bring Rice Krispie treats to the sporting event? I'm like, it's funny people's perceptions. I do really pride myself on having non-toxic products in my home, but I do have, like weak moments. And along with sugar, one of them is also Diet Coke.
Mhm.
And here I know, I mean, I know how terrible it is. You can look at the color of it and look at the ingredients, and you know that it is absolutely terrible. But can you talk a little bit about artificial sweeteners, like the ingredients in Diet Coke, and how those kind of contribute to this whole problem?
Yes. So artificial sweeteners, originally they came around for the low calorie option, right? Like no calories now that they've replaced it with the artificial sweetener. However, what research finds is it actually can be a little bit more harmful than just the plain old regular sugar that's typically in the product. It can be more damaging to your gut, and it actually can be 6 times more addictive from like a sweetener perspective than plain
Yeah.
sugar, which is pretty crazy, right? Because now we're swapping it out for regular sugar, and now it's even more addictive than what it was. And then other thing with artificial sweeteners, I always like to think through what type of artificial sweetener it is, right? Because we have different ones like monk fruit and stevia, and those are going to be more from our whole food, like a plant, essentially. The ones I get more concerned about are the ones that are very processed, like anything that ends in the LOS, like the OSE, tends to
Okay.
be a little bit more processed. And then the one in Diet Coke, which it might have changed, I haven't looked lately, is like aspartame, which for a lot of people, they have a negative reaction to it. It can cause migraines. And again, that's a much more highly processed artificial sweetener where it's going to long term do more damage on your body than good, while triggering that reward response still.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. So it sounds like you're more apt to recommend, because like I'm thinking of like in the morning, I usually have a smoothie, and a lot of the protein powders have stevia in them. So you're not as concerned about that. That's an okay ingredient if you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say that's an okay one. And again, the biggest thing to pay attention to is just exposure. So if you were having stevia in every meal throughout the day, I'd like we could strip back a little bit. But if it is just here and there in that protein powder, not a massive concern. And again, that's still a better alternative than some of those other artificial sweeteners there too.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're going to take my Diet Coke from me then. You're going to say I'm
Yes.
not. Okay. Well,
We'll
that's
try.
probably a good thing. Like even my kids, and I really don't drink it a ton, but like when I do, they're like, Mom, even they know how bad it is. So it's, yeah,
It's
it's
tricky.
time. I think it's time. Um, okay, well, so are you willing to just kind of talk through what you'd recommend? I mean, I have this sugar addiction, whatever, like refined sugar, also the Diet Coke thing. How am I going to get through this? Like again, like I've mentally like been able to get myself to quit alcohol. I've been able, like I'm really good at working out and all those things. Like, what's your recommendation to just kind of put a halt to this and really like flip the switch?
Perfect. So I love this question. It's exactly what I can guide you through. So biggest thing I like to think through is like what's leading you to have these cravings. And typically what we see, of course, you have like those emotional cravings, right? Like it can bring you comfort. It's something that will pick you up if you have a crappy day. But the other thing we want to think through is what does your blood sugar actually look like through the day? Because if you're on what we call blood sugar roller coaster, where your blood sugar is out of its like optimal blood sugar zone, if you're having extreme spikes and big crashes, we tend to crave more sugar. And
Okay.
what's going to help regulate your blood sugar the most is honestly protein. So when you think of protein overall, how do you feel you do in your diet?
Well, it's interesting you say that. It's funny. I've been through phases of my life. I mean, I went through a phase where I did like the high protein, low carb, and I felt like
Mhm.
my body responded really well to that, not only in just like the vanity side of it, but also how I felt.
Yeah.
And then, I feel like there's just so much information out there. And I think I got on this kick of like, I started trying more plant forward approach and more of like a vegan. I wasn't like super, super strict, but I found it really hard to get protein. And I've kind of come back from that a little bit. I still try to eat a lot of plants,
Yeah.
but I think I've really lost a lot of the protein in my diet through that process. And I'm not like coming down or judging anyone who's on a plant-based diet. But there's a lot of the proteins that are plant-based that I don't like and I
Mhm.
don't feel good. Like tofu, it doesn't work well for me. Soy-based products don't work well for me. So, I think I'm pretty bad when it comes to protein consumption. Like, I haven't really calculated how much I take in,
Mhm.
but I have a feeling it's not enough.
Perfect. Okay. So with thinking baseline of how much protein, on average, I tell if we're going to get started, starting with at least 100 grams a day, a good calculation you can always start with. And of course, it's dependent on physical activity, which we could definitely get into. But at minimum would be about 0.8 times your body weight is kind of that minimum layer of protein you'd want to hit. Ideally, we'd probably go above that, especially based on physical activity, getting you closer to like 1 gram of protein per pound. But again, starting with the baseline can be easier versus being like, oh, I need to hit 150 grams of protein in one day. So really just starting with 100 grams is a really good baseline. And the
Okay.
biggest tip here is actually divide that 100 grams into the 3 meals. And then
Okay.
there, whatever you don't get at the meal, you pick up in a snack. So basically every single time you're eating, there will be some protein incorporated.
Totally makes sense. And it
Mhm.
seems doable. I think one of the mental blocks I've had is this whole like shift. And again, I kind of dabbled in this like vegan idea. So I kind of went away from like red meat and, and I will buy pasture raised, grass fed, when I feed my family, even when I was doing more of a plant forward diet, I would still feed them those things. But I mean, what's your recommendation on really good quality protein that's not going to cause things like heart disease and other, when you hear about like high red meat consumption, I think that could be a mental block that's holding me back from eating enough protein.
Yes. So I think the biggest thing is variety, right? So if you're having different varieties of your different meats and fish, you're going to get exposed to different types of fats as well. And then I love what you point out of like trying to do pasture raised if it fits within the budget and if it's doable, grass fed as well, because you're going to get a higher quality animal product and get more benefit from it than harm as well.
Okay.
So my biggest tip, especially when it comes to the red meats, is we don't have to be extremely fearful. You can absolutely still incorporate it, but again, variety is key. You want to be exposed to different types of fish, different types of meat, where you both have the lean meat and then you can do some of the fatty meat as well.
Okay. So what can you just kind of paint a picture of like and I will say like I am a big smoothie person, so maybe comment on if you are pro smoothie or anti smoothie. I just feel like I can get so much, I pack like spinach in it and that's where I get a lot of protein in the morning and I've even been adding creatine because I've been reading that that's really good for
Ooh,
brain health.
yeah,
So but yeah, I want you tell me about your take on smoothies first and then walk me through like what you'd recommend throughout the day.
great. So I love smoothies. I think they can be such an easy way to incorporate everything where you get your fat, your carb, your extra fiber from like your spinach, your plants, and then the protein, right? Where you can add in a powder. Do you have a powder you typically like to add to the smoothie?
Yeah, so I've been using the Just Ingredients, which I do carry in the marketplace, but I actually really like it because it is a whey-based, but it's an isolate, because I tend to be a little sensitive to dairy. So
Okay,
I find that it's a easier dairy for me to take in. So that one I like, and it also has collagen in it, which I've
great.
read, can be good. So that's the one I use, and then I usually I throw in like a half a banana, almond milk, spinach. Sometimes I'll drop in some supplements.
Great. Okay, good. So you hit all the bases, right? You have the protein there, and I'd be curious how much protein you do put in the smoothie. What would you say is average the amount in the scoop that you're putting in there?
I think it's 30 grams.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. So I would say baseline with breakfast is minimum 30 grams to start the
Okay.
day off. And then other thing I'd be curious about is when you have a smoothie, how long are you full for? Like, is it 2 hours, 5 hours? What's that look like for you?
Yeah. So the other thing I mentioned, I think the protein powder has 20 grams, but then I add almond butter. I kind of calculated that it's about 30
Okay.
grams with
Okay.
it at the end of the day. Um, so I actually do feel really good after the smoothie. I feel like I'm full. It definitely gets me till lunchtime.
Perfect.
I feel like I have an emotional component to eating. Like sometimes if I'm like thinking really hard on something or I need like a brain break, I'll go upstairs and like try to find whatever. My
Mhm.
daughter loves to bake, so usually there'll be some sort of like, baked bread or something like that I go take a slice of. Um, but if I take the emotional side out of it, I do feel really good after
Sure.
smoothies.
Okay, so that right there is a perfect sign that it's supporting your blood sugar and it's sustaining you long enough to get you to lunch. what a red flag typically is if you have breakfast and you're like, oh, I'm starving within an hour, we'd want to rework the smoothie, we'd want to rework that dish. And typically it's lower in the protein primarily, but even maybe the fiber and fat. But sounds like that
Okay.
smoothie combination is perfect. And I think you can continue with that protein load there too.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, well, that's good. So I've got one meal that I'm doing right.
Yes. And that's typically honestly the hardest one for most people. Like a lot of people don't eat breakfast. So that's even starting from kind of like zero to trying to get them to work up to even getting protein in.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, well, that's good to hear. No, I'm a big smoothie person. I feel like, it's like kicks off the day and I feel like I know I'm getting that protein and those nutrients, and I can also sit there and drink it while I'm checking email or getting my day started. So tell me about, I think where I fall off the cliff is after that. I do get busy. I'll find sometimes I don't eat lunch, or I'm more snacky. Like I don't want to take the time to really make a nice lunch. So I'll just kind of grab if there's leftovers in the fridge, or I'll grab something really quick and easy, which I think is a bad habit because then by the time I get to dinner, I'm starving. And that's when I just like eat all the things. And I also notice like after lunchtime, I'll usually eat, it's rare I just don't eat anything, but it's oftentimes just kind of grabbing things. But I do find that's when I do crave sugar, as after lunch. So clearly that's the meal that's probably my big
but
problem.
yes. Okay. And I would say genuinely that's the most common one, right? Because usually we're like in the middle of work, we're running around, we may not have leftovers or quick grab and go options in the fridge. So this is where I probably emphasize focusing on, because it also is going to impact your sugar cravings post lunch, your sugar cravings post dinner as well, and then even your hunger going into dinner. So with that lunch, again, you're going to want to prioritize that protein. So for example, if you have leftovers, but maybe not a whole bunch of protein with the leftovers, this is where those things in the fridge could be really handy. So something like smoked salmon, or leaning into tuna, or if you liked any like sardines, anchovies. I know they're a little different, but those can be really quick protein sources. Or from an easy dairy front is using something like a Greek yogurt or cottage cheese that has those probiotics in it. Can be such an easy addition to the meal where you're getting enough protein, you're getting some additional fat too that can actually hold you over.
Yeah, I think that's been my issue, is like if I don't have something cooked and already prepared, but I didn't think about the other things that are like easy things to just have in the pantry or the fridge that could add protein.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a good one. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, something easy. And then with that, I try to encourage when it's mealtime is trying to at least have pretty close to a meal versus those snacks that just get gapped out like every hour, right? Because if you're able to have a solid meal, again, you're helping support the blood sugar, having better control over it in the afternoon, and not having as many of those like spikes and dips that then cause some of those sugar cravings too.
Well, I know you and I chatted like briefly about this, but what are your thoughts on the glucose monitors that are out there these days?
Yes, I think they can be incredibly helpful. Even if you're someone who's just like in that really healthy eating category, it can be so like data driven, I guess, right? So you can wear it, you can eat throughout the day, and you can literally watch what your blood sugar is doing. And this gives you really good information of how your body personally responds to different meals. So, for example, you might have that breakfast, and then you can watch your blood sugar post breakfast to see how long it's going up and how long it's maintained in your optimal zone where your body performs best, essentially. And then what you can also tell from this, like let's say lunch, you tend to have more of those grab and go things, not a whole bunch of protein, maybe more carb. Most likely what you would see on that monitor is a pretty big spike with a crash. And then again, that gives you more data of like, okay, lunch, I can rework a little bit, get a little more protein, maybe some more fiber. But I think overall it can be incredible data, especially if you're someone who just isn't able to pinpoint how to make changes for like your metabolic health or just your nutrition from day to day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I want to try it. If anything, for the sake of this journey, like, and hopefully I can share, I can be the guinea pig that helps other people out there. So I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna get one, and maybe we can in some way share what's going on as I'm eating these meals that you recommend. And again, hopefully help people out there
Yeah,
who
that
enjoy.
would be awesome. And I think recording it and some other little hacks you can always play around there with the blood sugars, even, of course, the pairings you do with the meals. So Like if you have one meal you absolutely love, but might get a spike from it, is tweaking around like the portion and the pairings, like the protein and the fiber. And the other thing I would encourage you playing around with is walking post meal to see if
Oh,
you
yeah. Okay.
notice. So
Okay.
that usually will help reduce essentially that spike because again, your body's using that glucose. So I always tell people experiment a ton when you get to have the monitor because you learn little hacks that you can do, especially if maybe your meal wasn't the meal that was your perfect blood sugar blueprint.
It's interesting. So I feel like, here I am in my 40s, and I feel like you can go on any social media channel and everyone's complaining about what happens to their body when they're in their 40s. And I really started thinking about what's changed. And one of the biggest things I realized is, I was in a corporate job for 17 years, but I was traveling a ton, was always on my feet. I was in and out of hospitals. I was standing a lot. I was just a lot more physically active, even though it was a corporate job. Now I own my own business, and a lot of my time is at a computer, responding to emails, working on the website, like doing all these things. And so I think I live, even though I feel I'm super active, we live in the mountains, I'm outside all the time, I work out every day, but I think generally, like if you look at like the course of 24 hours, I think I'm a lot less active.
Mhm.
So I think that idea of movement after a meal is probably a habit I need to really work hard on, because it's really easy to just sit all day long. And, like you never, as an entrepreneur, you're like, your day is never done. There's always more work to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think walking is incredibly underrated. And I think most people, we're all stuck on the desk looking at our computer for 8 hours or more a day. And of course, we can be like, oh, I go to the gym every single day. But when you think about it in like the grand scheme of things, that might be 1 hour out of your entire day of movement. So we don't really move a whole bunch, or most of us don't, which is a huge influence on our metabolism, on what you're wanting to focus on as well. So I think a lot of the research shows even just hitting the 7,000 steps a day is a really good baseline to help with metabolic health.
and this is like outside of a workout. So say I do my HIIT workout, or I go to
Mhm.
yoga or something like that. I still need to focus on this walking piece. Is like, I think that's maybe part of my mindset is like, oh, I've already worked out today.
Yes.
And so I'm missing out on that movement.
Mhm. Yeah, it is. So I think with the walking, some tips I always give, like the walking after lunch can be awesome. And I'd really try that, especially since you say that's kind of your craving sugar time. I would encourage you to go on a walk after the lunch to see how you feel there. And again, you don't have to go on an hour long walk. You could gap it through your day so you're not just sitting all day too, where it's like 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and you'd be amazed you'd be able to hit the 7,000 steps.
Well, I mean, this all sounds like actually fairly, easy, dare I
I love
say.
it.
Is there anything else, any other considerations I should make? And then if you can just kind of summarize and like walk me through. I mean, I'm like a task master. Like,
Love
give
it.
me my plan,
Yes.
and maybe we can create like a little bullet point in the comments for
Yeah.
people who want to follow this plan as well. Um, but yeah, tell me your thoughts there. Anything else I should think about while I'm trying to do the sugar detox, and then kind of give me like the cliff note.
To do.
Yes.
That's perfect. So the other one that I think gets overlooked is quality of sleep is crucial for when we're doing any diet change, especially with sugar, and when we're wanting to work on metabolic health. So if we're not getting quality sleep, it actually impacts our cravings that next day. We have dysregulation going on with our insulin, with our blood sugar. And if you get that built up over time, it can be a lot harder to almost get that metabolism back in place where we want it to be. So that's the other thing I just encourage people is like make sure you have a really good bedtime routine in place and a morning routine where you have a gap between waking up and getting on technology. So if like in an ideal world, you're getting up and spending some time out in the sun or getting some sunlight exposure, and then you can get into your work day.
Okay. No, that's something I actually haven't heard before. I mean, I've heard sleep is so important for so many aspects of life. But in terms of cravings, I haven't heard it really, relate to that. So do you have any top tips on, I mean, I honestly am a pretty good sleeper, and I have a 4-year-old. So when he goes to bed, I go to bed.
Love
I think
it.
I am getting good, a good amount of sleep, but I bet the quality could probably be improved, especially based on the sugar cravings and the fact that I've been eating a lot of sugar, more sugar than I should be eating. So what are your top tips for sleep?
Yes, I love this one. So with like thinking through a sleep routine, I always encourage if you can at least have an hour off of screen time from going to bed. So like at least the hour before, trying to put the phone away, trying to be off the TV, computer, maybe reading a book instead. And then the other things are making sure the environment's really nice. So where it's like cool, really dark, you're not having tons of light coming in. And then even making sure you use more of like your lamps versus overlight, over your overlights in the ceiling, because again, the less light exposure in the evening, the more your body gets into that circadian rhythm. And
Oh,
yeah, so I love using the light therapy there. And then with quality of sleep, like you can always lean into magnesium glycinate. That's a fantastic supplement to help with that deep sleep. And then I even have some people who will do like mouth taping if you're a mouth breather, because again, that helps enhance that quality of sleep too.
yeah, it's funny. I've been actually playing around with that a little bit. I carry a mouth tape, and there's a
Oh,
book that I thought was so fascinating called Breath.
oh, I haven't read that.
So good. Yeah, they basically did a study, a 10-day comparative study where they only mouth breathed for 10 days and then
Well,
they only nose breathed. I don't even know if the grammatically I'm saying that
yeah.
right. Anyway, it was really interesting. Like the results were astounding. And it wasn't even just, I mean, I think sleep quality came up, but there were other like really important biomarkers and even just as few as 10 days that had changed. So anyway, so I have been experimenting with that, and I do find that I think I do sleep better when I mouth tape. It feels a little
Mhm.
weird, and there's like moments where I feel a little claustrophobic, but yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
And also setting the atmosphere. I think I can think more about that and like really dimming the lights and kind of telling your body that it's time to go to bed.
Yes, yeah, kind of calming it down. So I
Yeah.
think that will be good. So I think your to do, I think what we really want to focus on, it sounds like that breakfast, you're doing really well with the protein. I would think we want to restructure that lunch. So I
Mm,
think kind of food wise, your new priority is getting a lunch in that has enough protein. So for you, it would be closer to 35 grams of
okay.
protein at that lunch. And then we want to have fiber with it, your veggies essentially, and then some healthy carbs. And then post lunch, I'd really encourage starting to walk. And even if you can fit in a little walk after dinner, that would be a great addition as well to help with those cravings, those sugar cravings specifically, and then with your blood sugar response. Um, and then with movement overall is working towards that 7,000 steps. If you think that's something you can track, we can definitely see kind of where you hit it day in and day out as well.
Yeah, I do have a watch. So I think, but I honestly like I don't pay very close attention to it. So I will start paying closer attention to it, making sure that I'm actually hitting the 7,000 steps. I just have a couple more questions. Number one, I mean, I think I know where fiber comes from. It's basically anything veggie forward, right? Leafy greens, that kind of thing. Protein, I have a pretty good idea where that comes from. Can you talk about healthy carbs? I mean, I feel like, my generation especially, like we've grown up in this like carbs are evil. And so it's like when I eat a carb, I feel guilty, but then yet I feel like they're a necessary part of a diet, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
instead of
We,
eating French
yeah.
fries, I should probably be like really focusing on what are those healthy carbs.
Yes. So healthy carbs, those are going to have fiber in them as well. So these tend to be, think of like your root veggies. So where you have your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, then you can have your whole grains. So your different rices, your wild rice, some people will do whole grain bread or whole grain pastas or lentil pasta, for example. And then again, with those carbs, as long as you're pairing that carb with protein, you can feel really confident in eating them. So the idea is that with carbs in general, if you want your body to benefit from them, you pair it with a protein. Where I think the disconnect comes is if you had a diet that was primarily carbs and very little protein, you would see some negative impacts on your metabolism, on your body composition. But when you use carbs in the right portion and the right ratio, your body loves them and is able to utilize them. It's getting your body that fiber exposure as well that helps feed the gut. So we absolutely need the carbs and they help fuel the body.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like all roads lead back to protein.
Yes. It's kind of that like master key to balance out your meals.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, protein. I'm gonna focus on protein. I think when we initially talked about this idea, you'd suggested 4 weeks was a good amount of time, which that sounds, I mean, I feel like I have a lot of detoxing to do.
Right.
Bad. I'm airing all my dirty laundry out there to everyone in the world here. So I'm committed to the 4 weeks.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this. Thanksgiving is there. Does this mean
Yeah.
like no Thanksgiving sugar at all? I'm okay with it. I can take it. But tell me about cheat treats. And then also like, is there, I'm like, I have heard of chocolates that are sweetened with like honey or maple syrup or
Mhm.
dates. Give me your perspective on that.
Yes. So I would say with Thanksgiving around the corner, if you have access to make something yourself where you can use those alternative sweeteners like the honey, the maple syrup, even dates, I'd really encourage it because you'll still get some health benefits from those food products. And then in addition to like when we're having the sweet, my biggest tip here is that you have a full meal before it. That we're,
Okay.
where we grew up, like you can't have dessert till you have dinner, kind of
Yeah.
like that, honestly, where you have enough protein and then you can have the dessert and then to really go next level, you could go for a little walk after that, and you're gonna have a much better response to that meal. So I think with your sugar detox, it would be absolutely okay to still incorporate like the honey, the maple syrup, the dates. Trying to do more of those whole base sugar options here and there would be absolutely okay.
Thanksgiving, we're okay. It's just
Yes.
a full meal, eat the protein, go on a walk, and maybe try to convince my husband, who's an amazing baker, to make it with whole food sugars.
Perfect.
I don't know if that's be possible, but we'll try. We'll see what
You
we can
got
do.
it.
And if we do find an amazing dessert, we'll post the recipe.
Yeah, do.
Um, awesome. Well, what do you think? Anything else? I feel like you gave me some really good, like super actionable, but like totally doable tips for this sugar detox.
Yeah. I think the other thing is just go through your pantry. I know you're huge on reading ingredients as is, but see if there's any random things that you're like, oh, I didn't know this had sugar in it, because it can definitely be hidden. So just do a triple check. I know you're great at looking at that label anyways. That way you can kind of see where the sugar might be sneaking into your diet. And then again, a big part of it is going to be that balance on the plates to improve those cravings too.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Well,
Well,
good.
thank you, Elizabeth. So I'll get to work and then let's touch base and I can report back with any sort of positive changes
Yes.
as part of my body. We still need to figure out what to call this, but like my body composition, I'm kind of done thinking about my physical form in the form of weight
Yeah.
and really thinking about reducing body fat and increasing muscle mass. So I think this is like a really awesome first step. And I'm looking forward to like touching base with you again and reporting back on the positive changes.
Awesome. Well, good. I look forward to it and keep me updated.
Yes, will do. Thank you.